So we wanted to make sure that our area had a lot of space for solitary play and individual play, especially since it's a quieter area and it can be an area for children to come and calm their bodies, since we have a lot of areas that are more engaged and louder in our whole classroom. So we chose to include a cozy corner with a tent, and this gives the children an opportunity to sit and read by themselves without having to see the chaos around them when they're in the tent. So we wanted to include a lot of natural materials in our area, and this creates a calming environment for the children. And we also wanted to include a lot of Waldorf-based materials, such as the silk scarves and the peg characters, and this allows the children to create their own stories instead of just having to sit down and listen to an educator tell a story to them. The 3 developmental outcomes I chose, which are on the little wolf bear paw things, are that children can create things in space, which involves using the silks and the peg dolls and other materials to create new stories. I also chose finding new words and stories and rhymes, which allows the children to discover books that they have not heard of before, and may allow them to discover new words and rhymes in the stories. And the last outcome I chose was telling a story using expressive language, and the children are able to express language when they're acting out skills and when they're creating their own stories and using the silks and the dress-up outfits and the puppets. I believe children learn best when they play with natural materials and the materials that they find in the environment around them. And I believe that they learn best when the materials are open-ended and they're not offered as a set outcome activity, but an activity that they can explore for days. So in our area, we included a lot of outdoor materials, such as these little wood shavings or things like that. We have little pine cones and some seashells with different textures on them that the children can feel. We also have a lot of feathers just in a box that they can use as swords, that they can use for telling stories, things like that. And then we also have these rocks that have the alphabet on them, so that they can use them as just rocks, but they're also can spell their names and write words with them. So I believe that children need a lot of space when exploring their areas and exploring the materials around them. So in our area, we had a lot of open space where the children can take the items off of the shelves and bring them to the floor and play with them that way. I also believe that children also need books that they can ask why questions to, and to explore the meaning of them with their educators or with the other children in their group. So the best role of an educator that I believe can happen in this area is to be an assessor and a communicator, and that they should be able to assess what's going on during the play in their center and be able to change anything that they believe isn't working with the space, or to add things to their children's play to enrich it. So I believe my passions and my beliefs and values are presented in this area a lot, because I like to use natural materials and open-ended materials, and I like to include books and diverse books and books children have not seen before in any area that I use. And this gives the children a chance to explore the materials that are in the world around them. So there were a lot of different materials collected for this area, and a lot of them are natural or Waldorf inspired. So the first thing we kind of collected were these silk scarves, and they have different textures to them. And the children use these to create stories and tell stories using them, or they can use them as capes or anything they really want. We also have peg people and these wooden trees, and the use of the peg people is so that the children can come up with their own expressions, and they don't have to see, the peg person smiling all the time or frowning all the time, and they can come up with the emotion. We also have these rocks that have story characters on them, and this is another way for the children to use the environment around them to tell new stories that they are creating. And we also have wooden pencil crayons, which the children can use in the writing center. So I believe that natural materials are developmentally appropriate for all ages. There are many ways to use them, and they're very open-ended. And you just need to make sure that when you are using natural materials with younger children, you're using bigger rocks, you're using, if you're using sticks, they're not as sharp, or not sharp. And it's good to get these children, familiarized with natural materials so that when they're older, they are gravitating towards the natural materials as opposed to the plastic toys that are usually in a center. There are a lot of natural materials in our area, and they're all very high quality, especially the wooden toys. So we have a lot of building blocks that the children use when creating their own stories. We have the wooden peg people. We've got the rocks with the story characters on them. And we also, for telling stories, we have felt stories, which are very durable. We've got the 5 little monkeys. And so when using these, if the children pull on them, they don't rip. They're very high quality. And so that's the best way to ensure that you can use them for a very long time and that they don't rip when they're angry and they try to rip something. And it gives the children a chance to play with them for a very long time. In order to provide a safe environment for all the children, we made sure that the smaller objects were put up higher when the infants came in. And we made sure to observe the children when they're using the smaller materials and the natural materials that they may, poke themselves with, the pencils. But we also made sure that there were no allergies to anything we were putting in the center, especially with natural materials. If you want to add acorns or things like that, you really need to check and see if there are allergies to that. But we made sure throughout the whole experience that there was nothing that the children were going to be harmed with or allergic to, and so it made our environment really safe. For our environment, we wanted our layout to not only be calming, but also to inspire the children to tell their own stories and their own fairy tales. We based a lot of our environment off of a forest theme and a fairy tale theme, because we believe that the children really like to create their own stories and their own fantasy worlds. We wanted our area to be very aesthetically pleasing. We added a lot of flowers, a lot of hanging arches and shadow figures. Underneath here we have a little secret garden with little birds and fairies that are attached and little gnomes. This was the children's favorite area to be in, even though it was under the bench. We've got our tent, which is very aesthetically pleasing for the children, especially this sparkle pillow right there. They loved to change the colors. We made sure to have lots of lamps and lots of natural light, natural materials, and the lamps above us. We also wanted to have a lot of culturally diverse books, and the favorite of the couple days were the Cinderella and Rapunzel books here. And the reason they're so popular is because they are different ethnicities, which you don't see in the regular storybooks and the regular fairy tales. So the children really enjoyed reading their favorite stories like Cinderella and Rapunzel in different character form. So I would say for what worked on Wednesday was the tent area. The children loved going in there and reading books and also playing with the sparkle pillow. Also what worked was the build your own story area. They love to build blocks up here and add the little characters into their castle. And the animals, they also liked reading the books that they haven't seen before. And another hit was the little writing center we had. So we had a lot of different markers and pencils and little stickers. We also had little square crayons that the children love to write with, since they don't usually write with that. they have little drawings up here that they made. So what we did to modify the area for Thursday was we added different natural materials to the area on this table. We took a lot of the materials from this shelf here where the children might not have seen them and laid them out for the children to play with. We also took some of the items off of here so that it would be less cluttered, and we took some of the books down from high up so that they would be able to see them. So again, what worked on Thursday was this tent and also this Where's the Dragon book. The children love this book and reading it and being able to find the dragon. The felt stories here on the floor, they worked very well. The children were very pleased at singing the songs and being able to use the felt along with the songs. Didn't work out on Thursday was the writing station. Not many children were interested in it. We didn't have as many stickers as on Wednesday, and yeah, they just weren't really interested in using it. Also, the Create Your Own Story area was not very popular on Thursday, as it was on Wednesday. And that may have been because there was a lot of blocks here, and the children were using blocks in the other area. So I think some of my key learnings for today and for this week were that if there are too many materials in a center, the children may be very overwhelmed, especially when they're coming into a room with a lot of new materials and a lot of new faces. So it may have been better to add less materials and have the children, come and explore the few materials that we have. Also, that an area may be too aesthetically pleasing and the children may feel like they can't touch anything that's on, the carts or the floor, and that it may be too, nice for them to touch, and they may feel drawn back from that. I also learned that, what did I learn? I learned something else, Suzanne. I also learned that we should have more activities for the children instead of just having the loose parts, because they may not know what to do with those loose parts if you don't have kind of a base to go off of. We just had a lot of loose parts set out with no real direction or drive in which the children would go in. So that would be something that I would do, is make sure there's a little bit more structure to my loose parts, but also having the ability for the children to, play with the parts on their own, but also know that there is a structured way to play with them if they would want it that way.